All right, I think Pastor has called us to come back and resume back to our prophecy conference, Understanding the Times conference. Grab your drinks or coffee and all that good stuff. We'll wait till a lot of the folks make their way back. Hey, just before we start, just by way of introduction, I am from the land of fruits and nuts. I am from California, and it is crazy, as they do say. If you've ever been there, we have some of the wackiest politicians you could possibly imagine, like Moonbeam Jerry Brown. He is about as crazy as they all get. Sacramento is out of their minds, and we're living in the Central Valley, and we just shake our heads every day. And honestly, the sad part about this, the conservative Christian element of California is leaving in droves. Okay, so check this out. They estimate per year in California, 250,000 of the middle class is fleeing out of California because they just can't take it, because we're getting taxed to death. We're getting a gas tax. They're planning on adding a 73 cents gas tax to us. And you can't retire in California, let's put it that way. You retire, you're going to go in poverty. And so I'm watching people in my own congregation saying, Brandon, I can't retire here. They're taking off to Virginia. Other people are taking off to Idaho. Other people are taking off to different parts of the United States. And then they call me and they tell me, hey, it's 2/3 less cheaper to live here in Virginia than it is in California. Some guy was telling me he got his car tags in Virginia. It was $50. In California, I'm looking at $500 for mine, for my car tags. And I have my wife's, my son's, and mine. So you added up, you got $1,500 a year in car tags, let alone all the other stuff. So it's a crazy state that I live in, and I appreciate Pastor here and your church here, because it's good to see the remnant that survives, because the remnant is shrinking in California because they're leaving. They can't take it anymore. And what's coming in California is the New Ager from San Francisco and the LA, San Diego area, and it's destroying the state spiritually. It's dead. And I was talking to a pastor friend of mine, and he was saying, yeah, we're part of the remnant. He goes, yeah, but this remnant's shrinking. He goes, I'm starting to know everybody's name in the remnant. And you think, yeah, I'm starting to see that too. So I don't know what you guys experience in Oregon, but that's what's happening in California, just to kind of know what's going on in the other states. But God has His remnant. God has His believers. And it may get down to 7,000, but hey, it still is there. It still is alive and well. And so anyway, I just wanted to let you know what's going on in California. By way of introduction, I'm the senior pastor of Rock Harbor Church. I was part of a mega church a long time ago, and I felt the Lord call me away to start Rock Harbor because we wanted to have the freedom to speak about current events, prophecy, and like Eric did in the first half, calling names out. Paul named names. And we were part of the Southern Baptist Convention. And in the Southern Baptist Convention, boy, you don't call names out. That was a no-no, especially if they're of your own kind, like Rick Warren, like Andy Stanley. These are all Southern Baptist guys. The Southern Baptists are watching that whole denomination turn upside down in liberalism and social gospel. I saw it 10 years ago. So I decided as a pastor, I've got to get out of this. So I went and started Rock Harbor. We're non-denominational because I was done with the denominations because they were all going south biblically. And so we started Rock Harbor about 7 years ago. I envy your pastor with the nice facilities you have. I meet in a school, and we have to tear down and set up every Sunday morning. It's a major production, but God's faithful. The people are faithful. We tear it up, set it down every Sunday, and we've been doing that. We bought some land, and so we're thinking about building it. But the problem in California is it's very expensive to build. Very expensive. I'm looking at a metal building, guys. possibly buying. And just to do the groundwork in California is about $2.5 million. Not counting the building. That's just the groundwork. And so, all things said and done, I'm going to probably have to spend $5 million on a building that is about 15,000 square foot, just metal, a metal building, like a barn type of thing. We don't have that money, so God's going to have to do something to get us that money. But nonetheless, that's how crazy it is in California. But we know that the Lord's put us there for a reason, and here's the deal. The message is getting out. Because a lot of the churches around us in California, like Eric was talking about, simply do not talk about what's going on. It's all fluffy, dancing in the tulips, unicorns, leprechauns flying. Everything is just this magical thing. And it doesn't even exist. It doesn't even exist in reality. It's not the Bible. And that's how the churches are in California. And I mean, we got people that are preaching barefoot and they look like hippies and they're doing all kinds of crazy things. And you think, where am I? Well, it's apostasy. That's where it's at. It's apostasy. And so you got a great pastor. God bless him for putting on a prophecy conference, man, because this is rare, extremely rare for churches to do. What they do in California is they'll put a conference on, and it's 10 ways to be stress-free. That's how it is. So commend your pastor, and God bless Kelly and Carla and all of them, man. God bless them, man. They are tremendous, and they're part of the remnant. Okay, so now let's get down to business. The coming global government that Antichrist will rule is forming right now. It is forming. Most of the churches and Christians can't see it, but it's been developing over several decades, and it's exponential, guys. It's exponential. What I mean by that is what you saw 10 years ago is so beyond now today what that was. And things keep accelerating. And when you see that, it should remind you what Messiah said, that you would see birth pains. And how do birth pains happen? They get closer and the contraction gets harder. And that's what we're watching. What the global government is the counterfeit to the Messianic kingdom. It's the millennial reign of Messiah. Satan is building his counterfeit. He has his satanic trinity, that he will play the role of the Father, the Antichrist will play the role of the Son, and the false prophet will play the role of the Holy Spirit and usher in their satanic kingdom in place of Jesus' kingdom. And so that's what's getting ready to form, or is forming, I should say. But what we need to do is, let's do some background work and go back to the Scriptures in Revelation and Daniel and get some nuances that they described and then relate it today and see where we're at on this, okay? So the first thing we want to look at is Revelation 13, 1 through 2. And it says, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea." Now the thing about John is he'll go back and forth between the individual Antichrist and then the state. And what he's doing is a very ancient technique of where the king is synonymous with the state. And by the time Antichrist rises, he will be the beast, but he represents the state as well. So John he'll interchange it back and forth. Okay. And he goes, "I saw a beast rise up out of the sea." That's referring to the Antichrist. "Now the beast which I saw," now this is the government, "was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and the mouth of a lion." And so in that encapsulation there in verse 2, he's referring back to Daniel chapter 7. There's something there that he's saying, you guys should know. I'm assuming you've read Daniel, is what John is trying to say, and he throws it in there and says, the one world government that's coming is a conglomeration of the previous governments before it. And it's a hint towards having different parts of different, of the Greco-Roman, the Medo-Persian, the Babylonian, all coming together. John made this point. And then he talks about the Antichrist. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and with great authority. So the outset is the one world government is a conglomeration of previous governments before it. 4, to be specific, we'll get into that in just a bit. So it looked like this to Daniel, having 7 heads and 10 horns, or to John, and he's saying it's a beast. And what it does is it has these different parts of these different animals. But notice on the one world government, it has 10 horns. What you'll see with Daniel in just a bit is that the one world government breaks up into 10 league confederations, controlling the entire globe. And that's where the horns symbolize the power there. And then Antichrist will eventually come and take all power for the whole world. If you remember Daniel, in Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar had his dream and no one could interpret. Daniel's brought in, obviously, and he can interpret it, and he says this in Daniel chapter 2. You, O king, are king of kings, for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory, and wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of heaven, he has given them into your hand. He has made you ruler over them. You are this head of gold. But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom, that's the key one, that's the one we're focusing in on. That fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all others. The idea here is that this fourth kingdom, this global government, will be so strong, it will crush other nations. It will crush the people of the earth, is the idea. The strength is found in what we see today in technology, in military might, in wealth. It will focus all that power all into a one centralized government. Okay, so this is just kind of review if you remember reading Daniel. And this is what the vision he saw. And these were the 4 empires that he saw. These 4 empires would rule over Israel and represent the times of the Gentiles until Messiah's kingdom came out of heaven to destroy it. Well, one nuance I want to show you is this interesting thing. Read with me. He goes, whereas you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. Yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, the strength is there, just as you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron, partly of clay. The 10 toes represent the 10 horns, the 10 league confederation. And so what he is saying is, in the final form of this fourth empire, which is the Roman Empire, it's going to be not fully iron. Now, iron represents strength, but it's ceramic, or it's pottery, and it's going to be put together in the feet. Well, when you're looking at this, you're looking at the final stage of the Roman Empire. Rome never really went away. We just don't see its imperial power today. As you see through Daniel, if you study it more and you study the book of Revelation, what you'll find out is that there are stages in the Roman Empire. During Jesus' day, the Roman Empire was in the united stage, the torso part. But then after that, the Roman Empire branched into a 2-legged of the statue, 2 branches. We are currently in the 2 branches right now, the 2 legs. So what a lot of prophecy guys will say that the eastern branch is centered in Russia, in that area. The western branch is centered in Europe, the European countries, and there's where the 2 legs are. And that those 2 legs will continue until they form a one world government, and then that one world government breaks into 10 confederations. So there are multiple stages. The last stage is the Antichrist stage, where you have absolute dictatorship by him over an entire world. But it's this idea in the feet that you see a clue here for us in the signs of the times, that there's something going on. It's iron, and we remember the Roman Empire, and it was strong and crushed people. But the final stage is iron mixed with clay. It's strong, but it's partly weak. It's partly fragile. That's interesting. That's a clue. Let me show you something. Notice, here we go. So the kingdom will be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they, basically referring to the metals which equal the kingdoms, will mingle with the seed of men, the clay. But they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. So the idea is that these 10 confederations, this global government, will be foisted on individuals, but the seed of men won't connect well, won't unite well with it. I believe there's a clue there about what we're seeing today. And here's what I think. Again, this is my opinion. I believe what he's saying is you're seeing nationalism versus globalism. Patriotism of the people not melting into a global government, that there is a resistance from the individual people in the nations from getting into a global government. It happens, but there's resistance, and because that resistance is there, it makes that kingdom partly fragile. Now, we're starting to see a little bit of this today. And who can forget the election? What was the election about? If you look at a bigger picture, Hillary Clinton and the Clintons themselves are globalists in their worldviews. Trump is a nationalist. He's a populist. He's for America, make America great again. God bless him. That's more biblical than being a globalist. But this is where I think we're starting to see the clay and the iron not mix. Because if you tell the average American, hey, would you like to have the UN run your life? They would say, no, that's crazy. I'm an American. I don't want to live like a European. I'm an American. But what's being squashed today in our schools, in our universities? It's anti-Americanism, anti-patriotism. And they're teaching our younger generation to hate our country. What's the end goal? They want to make them global citizens, not patriotic. And that's where you see this division starting to happen between iron and clay. What happened in Europe with Brexit? Another example of a country saying, we're British. We don't want to be part of the EU anymore. We want out of it. And they voted to get themselves out of it. And it ticked the EU off. And the rest of the EU is so upset about this. Then you have the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban. I don't know if you ever heard this guy talk, but I got to give him credit. He's a nationalist. He does not want to go into the EU because the EU is making all European countries take unvetted immigration, unbridled immigration, of Islamic immigration, who refuses to assimilate, destroying those countries. And you know what he said? I gotta give him credit. He says, we are refusing the UN Safe Global Migration Compact. And he said this, we don't see these people as Muslim refugees. We see them as Muslim invaders. We believe that a large number of Muslims inevitably leads to a parallel society because Christians and Muslim societies will never unite. He said this, multiculturalism is only an illusion. So Hungary, they put up the walls. We're not letting them in. Man, I've had people go to France, go to Paris, being harassed by Muslims. They walk in there and they say, there's like a parallel society going on here. What's happened to Germany? What's happened to Paris? What's happened to these places? Again, that's globalism. Globalism doesn't want any borders. Globalism is pushing multiculturalism. And multiculturalism is not the appreciation of someone's culture. It is saying, no, you can go right into the United States or any country you like and not assimilate, not learn the language, and create parallel societies. If you go to Minnesota and some of those places, you've got little Mogadishu. I mean, they're totally within themselves, contained. And you walk into a Walmart there, you think you'd walked into Pakistan or something like that. They're not American. That's intentional. That's completely intentional. That's where the globalists are coming in and going right over our nationalism, our patriotism. Interesting thing, I don't know if you saw this, Lou Dobbs had Burgess Owens on, and they were talking about the NFL. These guys who will not bow a knee to our national, or sorry, these guys that are bowing a knee and they won't stand for our national anthem. This guy gets on there, Burgess Owens, former NFL player, and he says, let me tell you some inside scoop on what's going on in the NFL. He goes, we are dealing with leftist globalists. The NFL cares more about internationalism and the socialist agenda rather than patriotism. Now, why would he say that? He was part of the NFL. He knew what was going on. He says, despite people not going to NFL games, he says they don't care because they're trying to go international with the NFL. So they don't want an American brand on there. So what they're trying to do is become like soccer. It's worldwide. And so they're doing it through TV ratings. And Roger Goodell's behind it. I just give you that as an example that this globalism is affecting every area of society. And that's where it's going. Wow. But what's the deal? Why is it that when you create this parallel societies where you have enclaves over here and enclaves over here, in a country, in a society, what does it do? What does it do to have multiple languages in a country? What does it do? That's intentional. It fractures the society. What they're doing to America is dividing everybody up. In this subculture, in this identity group, in this thing, in that thing, and that's to get everyone more loyal to something beyond America. And this goes all the way back to the Tower of Babel. When there was one language, okay, and they'll follow me on this, one language, and they're all clumped up into one world government, okay. For Satan to get this back, and God's going to allow it, for it to get back there, he's got to first break up the individual nation states. Because he knows how God broke up Babylon. Do you remember how God broke up Babylon? Now the whole earth had one language. Notice the language thing. And one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in land of Shinar, Babylon. And they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. So they're worshiping the demonic hosts in the heavenlies. Let us make a name for ourselves. Here is the key. Lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. They didn't want to scatter. They didn't want to branch out and create other individual nation states. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language. And this is what they begin to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down, and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, or Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth. Okay, you all know this story, but the key is the language thing. When God wanted to disperse them, He confuses the language. Language is the key. Okay? So we get that. That's what God did. So now Satan is doing the reverse. In order to get back to one language, back to a globalist government, he's got to break up the individual countries who have their own language. This is why you're seeing multiculturalism. This is why you're seeing multiple language being spoke in an area or a school. We got schools in California that most of the kids don't speak English. That's on purpose. They don't want them speaking English. They want parallel societies. Our educational system in California is so leftist, it's not even funny. It's off the chart Marxist socialist. What about language? What's the key here? Let me run through it. And it says, and he scattered them all over the face of the earth. The importance of language. God forced individual nations by creating different languages. Okay, a common language keeps a society cohesively together and patriotic. Oh, okay, what's happening in America? Once there's a differentiation of the language, war usually ensues. Did you know that? If you ever study history, watch what happens in European countries when there's multiple languages being spoken. They'll have a civil war. So what are they trying to do here in America? Language forms borders of a nation, the culture of a nation, the laws of a nation's government. All through language? Yeah, all through language. That's why God created the 70 nations by just simply confusing the languages. It creates a border? Yeah. What do they want? A borderless society. Why? Because you want a global government. They don't want individual nation states. They're going to do it through language. So when there's a difference in language within a country, it often leads to parallel societies and eventually a civil war. Wouldn't they love to break up the United States, the most powerful nation on the planet, because we're in the way of globalism? Donald Trump is standing right in the way of every globalist like George Soros, preventing the United States from going headlong into globalism like Hillary Clinton would have taken us. See, they think, well, his personal life. Look, I didn't vote for a pastor. I voted for a president. We're not, hey, I know Donald Trump's got his own issues and stuff personally. At the end of the day, we have nothing but a pro-Israel, pro-Christian president, pro-national, which is against the globalism. And now we're seeing these liberal, leftist, apostate Christians saying, well, you know, I could never vote for him. Well, who would you vote for? You only had two choices. Who would you vote for? I don't know. Well, I'm just abstaining. Oh, well, you abstained and you give a leftist your vote. I studied political science. I know how the game is played. These Christians not even thinking. You know why? Because they're leftists. They're Marxists. They go right along with this. So what's happening right now, and you have to understand it, why are they so mad at Kavanaugh? Why are they so mad at Trump? Why do they want, we're going to impeach him. We're going to get rid of Kavanaugh. Once he's in there, we're going to get him in this next election. The globalists want a nationalist like Trump out of the way. They want to sink their teeth into America, bring us down like Obama did, so that we will go right in line with the globalist agenda from the UN. It's happening. No one sees it. People think it's Republican versus Democrat. That's what they think it is. It's not that. It's way bigger than that. It's a spiritual issue going on. God does not want the globalism to happen. That's why he confused the languages. He made his point there in Genesis. He will allow it to happen. But we're not supposed to stand by and just say, well, I guess that's the way it's going to go, and go right along. We're supposed to fight it. We're supposed to be salt and light. Let me give you a second issue. That's number one. Nationalism versus globalism is going on right in front of our faces. And it's going on in the schools, universities. Okay. Second issue I want to bring to your attention of what's currently going on. Let's go back to Daniel. And he says this, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, trampling the residue with its feet. Notice the last phrase. It was different from all the beasts that were before it. Now, just like John showed us in Revelation 13, that's a conglomeration of the previous empires before it. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and then it's Rome, okay? But this Roman one-world government is different. It's different than Babylon. It's different than Medo-Persia. It's different than any empire you've ever seen before. What's he talking about? There's something there. Well, as you remember, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Alexander's empire with the Greece, And then he says this, and thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different. There he goes again. It should be different from all the other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth. There's the globalism right there. Trample it and break it into pieces. This is another clue. It's 2 times he said this, that the final form is different. Now here's the deal where you have to know history about the Roman Empire. You have to know what was happening in Jesus' day. And this is what was happening. The key difference from other nations before was imperialism. No nation or world empire had ever practiced imperialism until Rome came. And what is imperialism? It's the policy and practice or advocacy of extending the power and dominion of a nation, especially by direct territorial acquisitions or by gaining indirect control over the political or economic life of other areas. What it means is this, that a foreign nation, a foreign empire will start meddling in the United States. A foreign power start influencing things here politically and economically. Now, think about this imperialism, how it happened in Jesus' day. All you have to do is look in the Gospels. When Rome was over Israel in the united phase of its existence, what was it doing to Israel? Imperialism put its own people in the area. Before that, every empire just used nationals to rule through when it took over another state. But Rome put its own people there and its own military garrisons. So you remember the guy who was in charge in Judea? It was Pilate. That's a sign of imperialism. You put your own guy there and he's making sure everything's running right, right? Okay, you'll have a foreign dignitary there on the ground with troops. That's part of it. The second part of it is, if you remember, the Jews really didn't like this. They came to our Lord and said, hey, should we pay taxes to Caesar? You remember that? Most people don't catch that. That's imperialism. Now, the average Jew was paying 22 to 23% tax to the temple. They had no problem doing that because that went toward the priesthood, that went to keep the temple supported. It was that Rome put on another tax on them from them, and it all went to Caesar, back to Italy. That's what they didn't like. And you remember the phrase, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God. But that was a sign of imperialism, that a foreign entity will start eventually taking money from a sovereign country, a la the Paris Climate Treaty, that, thank God, Trump got us out of. If you ever study that, billions, I mean billions of dollars would have went right back to the UN from the United States. Render unto Caesar? Yeah, that's imperialism. And they want more of our money. They can't stand that our GDP is over 3 right now. They can't stand it because Obama was knocking us down to a third world country. Because that's the plan. Take more money from us. Oh yeah, that's the scheme. That's what Rome did. Imperialism takes that. And so eventually you'll start seeing troops on the ground. It hasn't come to that, but I can tell you this. It's sure coming in the form of money leaving the United States, going to third world countries and going to the UN so they can disperse it. It's called redistributing the wealth. And nothing's stopping that. That's what makes it different. Yeah, those are the 2 things you should be watching for right now. But let's put some teeth to this. Because now it starts getting real uncomfortable. It's one thing in theory, but when I see it starting to happen in front of my face, whoo! Because in California, I'm seeing this. Let me show you. If you're not aware of this, you should be. This is not some tinfoil hat theory that's happening. It is happening. I've done plenty of research on this, and it's happening all over California. I don't know if it's happening here, but people are telling me, and let me give you the particulars, and you'll say, wait a second, that's happening here maybe. Agenda 21 is a global agreement that was put into place in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil's Earth Summit, wherein 179 nations signed on to the implementation of it. George W. Bush committed the U.S. to this agreement, and every president that has followed. It was signed as non-binding. It's a soft law. UN action plan that was designed to assist the government at the local, national, international level to implement the principles of so-called sustainable development. So remember the definition of imperialism. It's not necessarily a country takes over. I could do it softly through your elected officials. I'll pay them behind the scenes, of course. They'll get some money for this. But they'll implement a soft law that these are the standards now we're going to use. And you won't vote for it. You won't even know it's happening. They'll just say, this is what we're implementing now. And it'll come straight from Agenda 21. Well, be specific, Brandon. This is what it tries to achieve. Agenda 21 control all land, water, mineral, plants, animals, all means of production, construction, energy, education, information, ultimately all human beings in the world. This is their plan to control it. This is it. It's in writing. To transition a country from national sovereignty to globalism by the means of imperialism. The removal and control of an individual's rights and balanced against those unnamed rights granted to the world community by the United Nations. Basically, guys, your Bill of Rights, your Constitution, if it continues to go this way, your rights will be criminalized. What? Yeah. If nothing stops this, eventually your rights will be criminalized. What do you mean? Well, your personal mobility, your property ownership, especially your property. That's what they want, is your property. Against your individual rights, which America is based on individual rights that are given by God. They'll now say, wait a second, your individual rights bounced up to the community's rights because the community is sovereign. And it doesn't match the community, so the community overrides your rights. You can't do what you want to do on your land because we'll tell you what to do on your land. We'll prevent you from doing everything. The scary part is there's specifics about this. It's the control of all natural resources. It's fundamentally trying to change your basic way of life, how you go about your life, outlawing historical ways of using the resources by controlling the atmosphere, land, mountains, oceans, fresh waters. What do you mean? Bit specific. In California, you might have heard this, our moonbeam governor, all these crazy politicians, let 300 million gallons of snow-capped rainwater from the Sierra Nevadas flow right into the ocean for the Delta smelt. That's not even indigenous to California. And then as they do that, and they let all that water flow into the Pacific Ocean, they refuse to build canals, they refuse to build reservoirs, and they refuse to give farmers their water. That's Agenda 21. Because the idea is we want to let everything go natural, like it was in 1500s and whatever, and we just want to live like primitives. Hey man, are you crazy? People are going to lose jobs. Thousands of people up in the valley that I live in are losing their jobs because they're telling the farmers by 2020, we're going to turn, you're not going to be able to put water on 20% of your farm. Well, what if you have grapes, or what if you have almonds? It's one thing if you have a seasonal crop, but what if you have trees? Oh, they're going to say, well, tough, you just can't water them anymore. We're just not going to give you the water. Well, what if I dig my own well? Oh, we're going to tax that well that you have. You're going to tax the well I dug for $30,000? You're going to tax the well? Yeah, we're going to regulate the water that you have. Agenda 21. All the farmers in California are now drying up and saying, I'm out of here. I can't farm in California. It's crazy. That's Agenda 21. They'd rather give it to a fish that's not even indigenous and let people go without jobs so they can create a welfare state. That's what's happening. Hey, I'm front and center in California. I know what's going on there, and it's crazy. But the people say, well, this is insane. No, it's Agenda 21. That's what the UN wants. And then it's the control of land use. I talked about natural resources like water, but land use, yeah, what you can do on your property. They think they can do a better job of managing your property, that you don't know what you're doing. Because the needs of the community need to happen. Let me show you this map. This will freak you out. You see all the parts in red? This is what they want for no-go zones for humans. The yellow is the buffer zones, which is a highly regulated use. If you can see them, the green is normal use. Where's the green? A couple lakes? A few spots here and there? This is their plan for the United States. You got to be kidding me. They really want it? Yeah, they really want this. Because they believe that they should have the right to that land, not you. And by the way, they're buying off politicians like there's no end in sight, left and right. And the politicians are going right for this. For instance, we have fires in California. You know what they're telling the people who live there that got their houses burnt down? We're not going to let you go back and rebuild your home. You would say, well, that's my property. Sorry, we're not doing that anymore. We're getting everyone out of the forests. See, there's an anti-suburban, anti-rural living. They do not like you living rural. They do not like you living in suburbans. That's a no-no. So you got land use, and then you've got the eminent domain issue. They just pull eminent domain on you. That's Agenda 21. And the term they'll use is redevelopment. We're going to redevelop this area. And so let's say you have, maybe in Oregon, 360 acres to yourself. It's yours. And if you lived in California, in some of these states close to San Francisco, and you say, you know what, I want to start using my property, I want to build apartments, and I want to build all this other stuff, and make money for myself. They're saying, yeah, sorry, you can't do that. You have a view shed. A view shed? What's a view shed? Well, Mr. Holthaus, bikers like to bike along the path by your property. And if you were to build apartment complexes, you would bust up their view as they're riding their bikes. And you're like, what? It's my property. Yeah, I know, but you don't own the scenery. And you're going to mess up the bikers in their leotards as they're riding past your property. They're like that. No joke, dude. I'm dead serious. The hardcore leftist lobbyists are biker groups. Not motorcycle, the biker guys. Hardcore leftists, man. You know why? Because they want you riding the bike rather than driving in a car. It's a whole thing behind that. The push from rural to city. They don't like you living in the rural areas. They want you in a city. That's funny. In the Bible, there's a theme about living in the city. Abraham decided to live in tents rather than go into the city like Lot did. There's a whole theme throughout the Bible between city living and tent living. And every time you see a city in the Bible, it's bad, no good, messed up. But the globalists want you in a city. You think, why? Why would they demonize urban or rural sprawl? Why would they demonize the suburbs? In California, check this out. It's called the cul-de-sac is the devil's spawn, okay? It's Senate Bill 375 combined with Assembly Bill 32. And the idea is, we want you in a city. We want you to stay, play, and work in a confined area, and you never leave it. And you think, why would they want to do that? Simple. Control. Agenda 21 wants to control you and your rights. Well, that's crazy. Well, it's population control. That's what it is. Redistribution of the wealth. The practice of Marxism. This is what they want to do. Take more from you and give it to the UN so they can disperse it the way they want to do it. See, they want you to feel guilty for being prosperous in America. And do you know why America's prosperous? Because we're following Judeo-Christian ethics as far as economics. Every country that doesn't follow Judeo-Christian ethics economically, they go on their head like Venezuela and they start eating the animals in the zoo. You practice communism, Marxism, I guarantee you're going to end up like Venezuela or Cuba or whatever. But that's what they want. So they want to take what you have and knock us down and give it to other people. And then they back it up with pseudoscience. The pseudoscience is alive and well. Here's the deal. If you go to the New American or other groups that watchdog global warming, or now they call it climate care, it is unproven science now. You know the hottest time in the United States was not right now. It was back in the Dust Bowl. Did you know that? The Dust Bowl was the hottest time in American history. But we didn't have SUVs then. So where did the carbon emissions come from? Oh, I wonder what. It's the sun. But they have to make up a global climate hoax because eventually they're going to use that to tax people. Even Eric mentioned this in his thing. That's what everyone's starting to get behind, and they know there's no science behind it. Who are the people involved? Well, the usual players, the communists, Marxists, leftists, progressive Democrats, and Republicans. Bilderbergers, Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, they're all in this ticket, by the way. And they're using unelected NGOs, non-governmental organizations, groups, boards, commissions, which override the rights of the average citizen. They cannot be fired because they are unelected. Deep state swamp. That's what Trump was talking about. Deep state is right. How do you fire someone at the EPA? How do you fire them? You can't. You don't even know who they are. And there's hundreds of them. What's happened is the politicians have punted their responsibility and duty to governmental agencies, department of this, department of that, and that you didn't vote for. And they let them run loose. And before you know it, you have bureaucrats running our country who are leftist globalists, and there's nothing you and I can do about it because we can't vote for them or fire them. They have secured themselves, which is very scary. What are the means? Treaties, agreements. Nothing law, nothing that you're going to vote on. Everything that happens in California happens without us voting. How did that happen? I don't know. It's somebody's carrying out Agenda 21. Soft laws. They didn't make the laws like they're supposed to. They just practiced a law and said, we're just going to do this. This is going to be a precautionary approach. Technology. How are they doing this? Well, they're starting to use cameras. They're starting to track you. Eric's going to talk about that a little bit on the technology. But they're using technology to find out what you're doing, where you're going. Everything you do is being traced and tracked. You use your phone, okay, they know where you're at. Or communitarianism is another tactic, or a third way. What do you mean by this? Well, the idea is that your individual rights will not come from the Bill of Rights or the Constitution. They'll come from the community's rights. And if the community's rights override yours, you're finished. If it's more important to have a viewscape on your land, that's what they'll do. Propaganda, guilt messages. You're told your suburban lifestyle is bad for the planet. You drive too much. You need to ride your bike 15 miles to work. You eat too much. You water your garden too much. You use too much energy. And you're destroying the planet with your selfish attitude, they'll say. Have you ever heard those things, those epithets? And by the way, another thing is, if you oppose Agenda 21 or any form of globalism, they call you an anti-Semitic. Yeah, have you heard that? You're thinking, what? I'm anti-Semitic if I oppose the UN? Yeah, because this is what they say. that you're part of the Nazi skinheads that think that the globalism is a Zionist plot to take over the world. So they, see, to shut you and I up, they say, well, you're just a Nazi skinhead that's anti-Semitic. And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. But see, they got to make stuff up to shut you down. Well, I don't want to be an anti-Semitic. I don't want to be a Nazi. That's a tactic. Have you heard these buzzwords? Livable, walkable, vibrant, bikeable, consensus, conversation, progressive, community, diversity, carbon footprint, smart, vision, green, stakeholder, regional, sustainable. Have you heard those terms? Those are all buzzwords from Agenda 21. All buzzwords. And they're getting our kids to believe it. Media, schools, colleges, universities all accept this. And then you have indoctrination. This leads me to the school. What's going on in the schools? Something very evil is going on. Real evil. It's Common Core. It's a standards-based movement. What do you mean? Well, just a little bit. It was embedded in some of the curriculum in our country since 1994. It's directly linked to Agenda 21 and UNESCO Standards of Education for All. It's funded by Bill Gates primarily. There's other funders, but he's the main guy pushing it. He's a leftist. Barack Obama agreed to impose it through the Department of Education with federal strings to ensure compliance. 41 states have adopted it currently, including my state. Well, what's the big deal? It is promoting globalism through the curriculum. It's not just dumbing down kids, which it does do. It is social engineering. Now, here's the thing I'm going to upset you with. You don't know how wicked this is. It's real wicked. It goes deep into Satanism. What do you mean? Let me show these two lovely ladies. The one on my right, your left, is Helena Blavatsky. She started the Theosophical Society, late 1800s. Very satanic, okay? Very satanic. A lot of Satanists go to the Theosophical Society. After her comes another lady, which is on my left, your right, Alice Bailey. She's part of the Theosophical Society. She starts channeling a demon by the age of 15 called the Tibetan. She calls him the Tibetan. She allows this demon to channel her, or she channels it, and this demon then proceeds to lay out for her the plan called the New World Order. And she writes it in books, man. I think she wrote like a total of 24 books. The worst guys in history read these books, like Hitler and Stalin, Mussolini. They read her books, especially Hitler. Highly demonic, but laid out a plan of bringing in the age of Aquarius, bringing in the new age, the new world order, a governmental one world government and a one world religion. And they said we're going to do it through individuals in society. She then founds the Lucis Trust. It used to be called Lucifer Trust, but then she changed the name because it didn't want to be too obvious. So she changed it to Lucis Trust. Lucis Trust, obviously her buddy Lucifer is the head of this. She gets connected to the UN. She becomes friends with another guy by the name of Robert Mueller. Not the guy investigating right now. They can't find anything. But Robert Mueller worked at the United Nations. Him and Alice Bailey connected. Her group, Lucis Trust, obviously putting money in their pockets. The connection then was made. Robert Mueller then writes World Core Curriculum. His plan was he took from Alice Bailey what she was telling him and her books and information that she got from a demon, and he put it in the UN's manual. This is it. Does that ring a bell? World Core Curriculum? Huh. Then along comes David Coleman. His mom is a raging Marxist. This is the writer of Common Core. All the connections go back to the Tibetan feeding information to Alice Bailey, who gave Robert Mueller the information, who produced it for the UN. Then David Coleman comes and takes what the World Common Core and puts it in Common Core in America. What are you saying? I'm saying there's a direct link, if you keep going back, to a demon. And I don't know how high-ranking that demon was, but Common Core comes from that, the day. Well, Brandon, that's just crazy. Is it? Because it's promoting the same thing Alice Bailey said about a new world order. Where have I heard that term from? Oh yeah, politicians use it, right? Globalism, new world order, even the Bushes used it. Huh. Where do you think these terms come from? So what I'm saying is the indoctrination that's happening in the schools is right there in the curriculum. It's teaching little boys and girls to be a global citizen, to not really love America, because America, they'll say, is bad, and all the atrocities that happen, and America's bad, and we need to move on beyond that. Huh. I could go on and on about Common Core, but suffice it to say, it's evil to the core, and it's running in all of our schools. At least 41 states have adopted it. Last one, and I'll finish on this: create false problems. Anthropocentric global warming, or man-made global warming, instead of blaming it on the sun, blame it on man's SUVs. Racism, phobias, white privilege, cops are bad. All it's doing is creating class warfare, which is exactly what Marxism wants, what Agenda 21 wants. Creates victims and persecutors. We're into a point in society, and I don't know if you saw the trial, not trial I should say, it was a trial in one sense, but with the hearings of Kavanaugh. We're at a point now in society where someone can make an accusation and have no evidence, and that be believed. Wait a second, when I read my Bible, all through the Old Testament and New, 2 or 3 witnesses. 2 or 3 witnesses, I mean, hands down, it's all through it. We're at a point in society that says, well, I'm a victim, and you did this to me, and I don't care if I don't have any proof. You have to believe me. Whoa. Whoa. That's beyond our Constitution. It's beyond our Bill of Rights. Where's it coming from? Thank you, UN. Thank you, globalism. That's exactly what they tried to do. Do you remember what rights they took away from the Jews when Rome was over them? It took them the right away of capital punishment. Remember that? They took capital punishment away. Their rights overrode the Jews' rights. And we're starting to see that today. We're getting a 2-tiered level of justice. And that other tier is the global tier, not the Constitution of America. Oh, man. What are the implications then? Well, I pray that the rapture happens soon. Okay? That's number one. And because I don't want to see a lot of this. But we're only promised the rapture prior to the tribulation. So it's very possible you and I will see a lot of run-up, a lot of setting up of the table before this all goes down and we're taken out of here. Well, if that's the case, I need to prepare myself. I need to prepare myself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, of how I'm going to handle it when some bureaucrat says, I can't do this anymore. When you watch your rights erode away to some global government, you better be prepared for that, because guess what they're wanting you to do? They want you to fight them. They want you to take up arms and start going after them, and they say, perfect, That's exactly the reaction we were looking for. Now we can bring in our own UN troops to get the order maintained. If you can't control Antifa out there in Portland, who will control it? See, when you have mass chaos and you have people revolting in civil wars, and remember I said the language causes civil wars, you have multiple languages, all this is to get people riled up into a civil war, and then a strong man can come in and says, I'll take care of business. A lot of this is what they want the American people to do, is play right into their hands. Yes, fight. Go for it. Civil war, and that will play right into their hands. You've got to know how the game is being fought. Don't play the game. That's exactly what they're wanting you to do. Turn the other cheek. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and pray to God the rapture happens soon. Let's pray. Father, we do thank you, Lord, for all that we can learn tonight. I know it was a lot, but it's right in front of our face. We see what's happening in the world as you're moving the world to that final climax. We see the table set. Help us to prepare for this. Help us to understand it, to warn other people, but to prepare ourselves spiritually. As Eric talked about apostasy happening, and we see the global government forming, we see a convergence of all these things happening right in front of our eyes. And we remember the words of Jesus. When you see these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. God bless you guys. Pastor?